Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, March 6, 2020. A look at foreign investment in the United States. Select USA is a federal program under the Commerce Department whose purpose is, quote, to promote and facilitate business investment in the United States, end of quote. The agency has produced a fact sheet which discusses the amount and the importance of foreign direct investment, or FDI, in the United States. There's more FDI in the United States than in any other country. 7,357,700 U.S. workers were employed by foreign-owned firms in 2017. Foreign-owned firms in the U.S. invested $62.6 billion in research and development. Foreign-owned businesses accounted for $382.7 billion in U.S. exports. And in 2018, over 50% of the FDI was from the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Germany, Ireland, and France. Only 1.4% of the FDI in 2018 was from China. Now, these numbers don't reflect the amount of black money invested through offshore entities who exist solely to hide the source of their money, not only from the U.S., but also from their own country of origin. However, these numbers do illustrate how important foreign investment is to the growth of the U.S. economy. Now, what's the biggest barrier to foreign investment? The income payroll tax system. As shown on the IRS site, the U.S. has a number of tax treaties with other countries. These treaties govern the tax treatment of investors residing in the U.S. making investments in foreign countries, as well as residents of foreign countries making investments in the United States. Now, basically, these tax treaties provide that foreign investors be taxed in a way similar to the way a U.S. resident would be taxed in the same investment. Now, of course, these tax treaties apply only to the federal income tax. Any U.S. state with a state income tax is not bound by the terms of the treaties. Now, about 70 countries currently have tax treaties with the U.S., but only Mexico and Venezuela in Latin and South America currently have tax treaties in place. Now, as anyone living in Florida or other southern states knows, there are many people in Latin and South America who want to invest in the U.S., but because of the lack of a tax treaty, they are often forced to invest and pay very high income taxes both in the United States and in their home country. These income taxes greatly reduce the net return to these investors and are a significant deterrent to investment. Now, most foreign investment is made through a U.S. corporation created by a foreign investor. Now, even investors from countries with whom the United States does have a tax treaty are still paying federal income taxes, and in many cases, these taxes are at a higher rate than U.S. citizens pay. Now, a regular corporation has investment returns taxed at the corporate rate of 21%. And then that money is taxed again as ordinary income when it's distributed as dividends to the owners of the corporation. This creates a situation where income taxes reduce the investment return by 40 to 60%. When the 79% being distributed is reduced by another 40% in ordinary income taxes, the investor is left with a net of just 47.4% of what was originally earned. This is why most U.S. investors and small business owners use Subchapter S pass-through entities, which means that the corporation's income is not taxed at the corporate level, but is taxed only at the individual owner's level. Now, Subchapter S is the title of the provision in the income tax code dealing with these corporations. Now, this means that using a Subchapter S corporation, 100% of a corporation's earnings are taxed only at the individual level. Assuming a 40% income tax rate, the investor would have 60% of the amount of corporate earnings, not 47.4%. The problem is, if you're a foreign investor from a country with which the U.S. has no tax treaty, you can't take advantage of the provisions of Subchapter S. Tax reform presents opportunities for foreign investors in U.S. businesses. That's the title of an article written by Seth Enton for the Holland and Knight law firm. The article explains how a foreign investor from one of the countries which does not have a tax treaty with the U.S. can take advantage of U.S. tax law by becoming eligible for Subchapter S treatment. The foreign investor can combine portions of the U.S. tax code with a provision of the 2017 Tax Act which almost no one else has ever heard of. Of course, this benefit comes at a price. You have to hire sophisticated tax advisors like Mr. Enton and his firm to create electing small business trusts that will own shares of a corporation and thus allow the corporation to elect Subchapter S status. Complicated? Of course. But this provision further enriches tax professionals and makes the income tax code even more difficult. It's also, like the rest of the income tax code, totally unnecessary. Now, as we know, the way you calculate the rate of return on an investment is to look at what the investment yields to you after paying any applicable income taxes. If there's a 10% return, but the effective federal tax rate is 30%, then the actual return is not 10%, but 7%. Now, the obvious question is, why would anyone seeking foreign investment in the United States continue to support the income payroll tax system that punishes foreign investors? Well, the reason is obvious. The ruling class and their minions want to retain their control over us, and they want to keep their income stream flowing. Anyone who thinks that they're maintaining the income payroll tax system for any other reason is just deluding themselves. Just because you can't conceive of something being that evil doesn't mean that these evil people are not out there. Now let's look at the real solution, the fair tax. Now, if you're a foreign investor looking at the complicated morass of income tax laws in countries around the world, you evaluate a number of factors to determine where you want to invest. Now, in many cases, the safety of the investment is more important than the return on the investment. They follow the maxim stated by Will Rogers, the cowboy philosopher of the last century, who advised, "Don't worry as much about the return on your investment as the return of your investment." In other cases, foreign investors will look at factors like the exchange rate of their currency related to the currency of the country in which they are considering investing. If the currency of their country, like the currency of Venezuela for example, is rapidly losing value, then the idea of investing in a country with a more stable currency is very attractive. These and other factors are why the U.S. is attracting so much foreign investment. However, how much more investment could be attracted to the U.S. if investors were receiving not 50 to 60% of the return on their investments, but 100%? With the fair tax, no citizen or foreign investor would ever have to hire expensive tax professionals. And with the fair tax, there is no fear that the ruling class and their minions will eliminate a tax benefit or dramatically raise the income tax rates and confiscate their money. This is why the fair tax will create a huge increase in foreign investment in the United States. This investment will lower interest rates and make more money available to small business owners. Many more jobs will be created, and the competition for labor will create higher and higher incomes for everyone in the U.S. And this increase in income will create more retail consumption and result in more income to the U.S. Treasury. In conclusion, the above scenario on the effect of the fair tax on foreign investment is not some vague theory, it's simple logic. If you reward something, you get more of it. The difference is that the fair tax does not reward the ruling class and their minions like the present income payroll tax system does. When the fair tax becomes law and the corrupt income payroll tax system is gone, future generations will ask, how could a small group of greedy people convince their parents and grandparents to let them make huge profits at everyone else's expense? And how could this greedy group do this to the people who trusted them? Well, maybe the answer to that is as simple as this. When a man who had swindled millions of dollars from retired people was brought before the judge for sentencing, the judge asked him, "How could you swindle all those nice people who trusted you?" The swindler answered, "Your Honor, people who trust you are the only people you can swindle." Well, it's time to examine not just the words, but the actual deeds that the ruling class and their minions are doing. As despots have learned throughout history, when people look at actions rather than words, the enormity of the fraud being perpetrated against them becomes evident, and when that happens, the ones committing that fraud can never stand against the people's anger. It's time to take back control of our income and our lives and demand a sane tax system to fund the federal government. Demand that Congress pass the FAIRtax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax, and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.